The fork clattered against the marble floor, echoing through the silent dining room like a gunshot. 17 pairs of eyes turned to stare at the woman who had just committed what could only be described as suicide by instinct. Mara Bennett's hand was still raised, her palm stinging from the impact of metal against skin, her breath coming too fast as she watched the most dangerous man in the city stare at her with an expression she couldn't read. Dante Morelli didn't blink, didn't move. The fork, laden with almond-crusted salmon, lay at his feet like evidence at a crime scene. "That has almonds," she said, her voice somehow steady despite the terror crawling up her spine. His dark eyes narrowed, just a fraction. Around them, his men had gone unnaturally still, hands drifting toward concealed weapons. But Dante raised one hand, barely a movement, and the room exhaled. "How did you know I'm allergic?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade through silk. 24 hours earlier, Mara had been someone else entirely, not in name, but in circumstance. She'd been the invisible woman, the one who brought appetizers at elite parties, refilled champagne glasses, and disappeared before anyone could remember her face. It was precisely where she needed to be. Invisible meant safe. Invisible meant her ex-husband's creditors couldn't find her. Invisible meant she could work 3 catering jobs, sleep 4 hours a night, and slowly, painfully, claw her way out of the $100,000 hole Marcus had left her in when he'd vanished 18 months ago, and vanished with his gambling debts, his lies, and her entire savings account. The scar on her ribs, a parting gift from one of Marcus's more enthusiastic collectors, still ached when it rained. But Mara had learned to compartmentalize pain. Physical, emotional, and financial. Lock it away. Keep moving. Survive. She stood in the kitchen of the Bella Court Hotel's catering facility, reviewing the evening's menu with practiced efficiency. Her supervisor, Rita, was reading from a tablet, her nervousness barely concealed. "This is the highest profile event we've done in 2 years," Rita said, her voice tight. "Dante Morelli's 35th birthday. Private dining room. 40 guests. Most of them..." She lowered her voice. "Well, you know who they are." Everyone knew who Dante Morelli was. The youngest boss in the history of the 5 families. The man who'd consolidated power in the city's underworld before his 30th birthday through a combination of strategic brilliance and ruthless execution. Literally. The newspapers called him the architect. Law enforcement called him untouchable. His enemies stopped calling anything after they crossed him. Mara's hands didn't shake as she arranged dessert plates. She'd learned long ago that fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. "What's the dietary restriction list?" Rita blinked. "What?" "Allergies, preferences, religious restrictions." Mara looked up from the plates. "For an event this high profile, there has to be a list." "Oh, right." Rita scrolled through her tablet, frowning. "Nothing major. Standard stuff. Wait, Morelli himself has a severe tree nut allergy. Specifically almonds. His head of security sent 3 emails emphasizing that point." She looked nervous just mentioning it. "No almonds anywhere near his food. They're bringing their own taster to check everything before it's served." Something cold slithered down Mara's spine, a memory she couldn't quite place. But she filed the information away with the same meticulous care she applied to everything. Details saved lives. She'd learned that the hard way. The evening arrived wrapped in February cold, and the kind of rain that felt personal. Mara wore the standard catering uniform, black dress, white apron, hair pulled back severely, and felt the familiar cloak of invisibility settle over her shoulders as she entered the Bellacourt's private wing. The dining room was excessive in the way that only old money and new power could achieve. Crystal chandeliers caught light and scattered it like diamonds. The table could seat 50, but was set for 40, each place setting worth more than Mara made in a month. The walls were paneled in dark wood that had probably witnessed a century of deals, threats, and carefully worded promises. The men filing in wore suits that cost what Mara made in a year. They moved with a particular awareness. the kind that came from living in a world where threats could materialize from any shadow. She recognized some faces from newspapers, others from mugshots she'd glimpsed during Marcus's legal troubles. And then Dante Morelli entered, and the room's gravity shifted. He wasn't what she expected. Somehow, despite every photo she'd ever seen, Mara hadn't been prepared for the reality of him. Dante Morelli was tall and broad-shouldered, with a presence that made people unconsciously step back to give him space. His suit was midnight blue, so dark it was almost black, tailored to emphasize the power in his frame. His face was striking rather than traditionally handsome. Sharp cheekbones, a nose that had been broken at least once, and a jaw that could have been carved from marble. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Dark, impossibly dark, the kind of eyes that saw everything and revealed nothing. He moved through the room with unhurried confidence, accepting greetings with slight nods, his attention seeming to touch each person for just a moment before moving on. When his gaze swept past Mara, stationed at her serving post near the wall, she felt it like a physical touch. Then it moved on. She exhaled quietly, still invisible, still safe. The dinner progressed with the careful choreography of high-stakes theater. Courses appeared and disappeared. Wine flowed. Conversation remained carefully neutral. Business was discussed in code, and territory negotiations were disguised as pleasantries. Mara moved through it all like a ghost, refilling water glasses, removing plates. Her mind partially elsewhere. She was calculating, and always calculating. This job paid triple her usual rate. That meant she could put an extra $300 toward the debt. If she picked up the morning shift at the coffee shop tomorrow, she could add another $50. Every dollar was a step closer to freedom. She was so focused on numbers that she almost missed it. The head chef personally brought out the main course. Pan-seared salmon with a golden crust, artfully arranged over roasted vegetables. Beautiful. Elegant. The kind of dish that belonged in magazines. Mara was clearing the previous course from Dante Morelli's right side when her eyes caught the dish being placed in front of him. The golden crust. She'd seen that preparation before. Her brain, trained by years of catering and 3 months of culinary classes she'd taken before Marcus's debts had ended that dream, processed the visual in an instant. Almond crust. The nuts were ground to a fine, almost invisible powder and mixed with panko and herbs. But she could see the telltale texture, could practically smell the sweet, distinctive scent beneath the more prominent herbs. Her gaze flicked to the head chef, whose face had gone pale as he realized his mistake. To the head of security, whose hand was already moving toward his weapon. To Rita, frozen in the doorway, horror dawning in her eyes. The fork was already in Dante Morelli's hand, already rising toward his mouth. Mara didn't think. Thinking would have reminded her that touching Dante Morelli uninvited was probably a death sentence. Thinking would have paralyzed her with the understanding of what she was about to do. She moved. Her hand shot out, striking the fork with enough force to send it flying. The clatter as it hit the marble floor was deafening in the sudden silence. And then she was aware, painfully, viscerally aware, of 17 pairs of eyes locked on her, of the absolute stillness that had descended on the room. The way Dante Morelli was staring at her with an expression that made her blood turn to ice. She'd touched him and struck something from his hand in front of his entire organization. "That has almonds," she heard herself say, her voice steadier than it had any right to be. "You're allergic." The silence stretched. Someone's hand was definitely on a gun now. She could feel the weight of imminent violence pressing against her skin like a physical thing. Dante Morelli's eyes hadn't left her face. She couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if she had seconds or minutes left to live. Then he spoke, his voice quiet, controlled, and somehow more terrifying than if he'd shouted. "How did you know I'm allergic?" "The dietary restriction list," Mara said, her throat dry. "Your security sent 3 emails. No tree nuts. Specifically, no almonds. Severe allergy." She gestured toward the fallen fork with a trembling hand. "That's almond crust. Someone made a mistake." Dante's gaze shifted to the head chef, who had gone from pale to gray, then to his head of security, whose face was stone, but whose eyes promised violent consequences. Then back to Mara. Your name? It wasn't a question. Mara swallowed. Mara Bennett. Mara Bennett, he repeated, as if tasting the syllables. You just saved my life. I just did my job, she said, then immediately regretted it. You didn't contradict Dante Morelli. You didn't. Your job. Something that might have been amusement flickered in those dark eyes. Most people in your job are too terrified to breathe near me. You knocked a fork out of my hand. Instinct, Mara whispered. Interesting. He stood slowly, and she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Every instinct screamed at her to look away, but somehow she couldn't. Carlo, the head of security, stepped forward. Boss? Find out how this happened. Find out who failed to check the menu. Then deal with it. The words were casual, but the implication was steel-edged. And have a new meal prepared, from our own kitchen. Yes, boss. Carlo's gaze flicked to Mara, assessment in his eyes, before he strode toward the terrified chef. Dante looked back at Mara. You'll stay. Her heart stopped. Sir? Everyone else can leave. You'll stay. He gestured to the chair beside his. Sit. I'm working. Not anymore. Tonight, you're my guest. He pulled out the chair himself, the gesture somehow both courteous and commanding. Sit, Mara Bennett. I want to know more about the woman who slapped a fork out of my hand. Around them, his men were watching with unconcealed fascination. Rita looked like she might faint. The other servers were backing toward the door, clearly relieved to be dismissed. Mara looked at the chair, at Dante Morelli, standing beside it, waiting with the patience of a man who knew she had no choice. She sat. The door closed behind the last departing server with a finality that sounded like a cell door locking. The ride to Dante Morelli's estate happened in a blur that Mara's mind couldn't quite process. One moment, she was sitting in the now empty dining room, watching him conduct business with quiet phone calls, while his security team moved around them with military precision. Next, she was being escorted to a car that probably cost more than her childhood home. This isn't necessary, she'd tried to say. I can just go. No. Dante's voice cut through her protest like a blade. He was seated across from her in the back of the Mercedes, his attention on his phone, but his focus was entirely on her. She could feel it. Someone tried to kill me tonight. Whether through incompetence or intention, I don't yet know. Until Carlo determines which, you're under my protection. I'm not in danger. You are now. He looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. You saved my life. That makes you either an asset or a target, depending on who orchestrated tonight's failure. I don't leave assets exposed. The way he said assets made her feel like a chess piece being moved across a board. But arguing seemed futile. Arguing might make him look at her too closely. Might make him wonder why a catering server had such extensive knowledge of food allergies, or why her hands bore the faint scars of kitchen burns from the culinary training she'd never finished. It makes him curious enough to dig into her background, to find Marcus's debts, to realize she was already drowning in the kind of trouble that made Dante Morelli's world look almost appealing by comparison. So she stayed silent and watched the city slide past the tinted windows. The Morelli estate sat 30 minutes outside the city, behind walls that looked decorative but were certainly anything but. The gates opened with silent efficiency as they approached. The driveway curved through manicured grounds that, even in February's bleakness, managed to look elegant. The mansion itself was a modern Italian architectural style meeting old-world opulence. 3 stories of stone and glass that somehow managed to look both welcoming and fortified. Lights glowed from windows like eyes watching their approach. Mara's throat tightened. This wasn't protection. This was captivity dressed in expensive clothes. Welcome to my home, Dante said as the car stopped. He climbed out first, then turned back to offer her his hand. She looked at it, at the scarred knuckles that had probably broken bones, at the strength evident even in the simple gesture, at the choice that wasn't a choice at all. She took his hand. His grip was warm, firm, and somehow careful, as if he were aware of his own capacity for damage and chose to restrain it. For now, inside, the estate was precisely what she'd expected, and nothing like it. Yes, there was opulence, marble floors, artwork that belonged in museums, and furniture that whispered old money and new power. But there was also warmth. A fire was burning in the grand fireplace. Books scattered on tables, clearly being read rather than serving as decoration. A half-empty espresso cup on a side table, marking this as a space someone actually lived in rather than just owned. A woman appeared from a side hallway, late 50s, steel-gray hair pulled back, wearing practical clothes, and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. Her eyes swept over Mara with the kind of assessment that made her feel simultaneously invisible and entirely exposed. "Sophia," Dante said, "we have a guest. Prepare the blue room. The guest has a name, I assume." Sophia's voice carried the faint trace of an Italian accent, and the tone of someone who'd known Dante long enough to speak frankly. "Mara Bennett." Dante shrugged off his suit jacket, draping it over a chair with the casual confidence of a man entirely comfortable in his domain. "She'll be staying with us for a few days." "Will she?" Sophia's gaze returned to Mara. "Does the girl get a say in this?" "No," Dante said simply. Then to Mara, "Sophia runs this house. Anything you need, ask her. The estate is secure. 24-hour patrol, cameras on every entrance, and a security team rotating in 8-hour shifts. You're safe here." "Unless I try to leave," Mara said quietly. Something flickered in his eyes. "Unless you try to leave before Carlo determines whether tonight was an accident or an attack. If someone targeted me through that meal, they might target you next. You're a witness. You're valuable." He paused. "And you saved my life. I protect what's mine." "I'm not yours. Not yet." The words were soft, almost casual, but they landed like a physical touch. "Sophia, show her to her room. Mara, we'll talk more tomorrow. You've had a long night." It was a dismissal. A polite one, wrapped in concern, but a dismissal nonetheless. Mara wanted to argue, wished to demand that he let her leave, wanted to do anything but meekly follow Sophia up the curved staircase like a good little prisoner. But exhaustion was crashing over her in waves. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last few hours was evaporating, leaving behind bone-deep weariness. And beneath that, a cold calculation. Fighting Dante Morelli was futile. But maybe she could survive him. The blue room was beautiful. Too beautiful. A 4-poster bed with linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. An ensuite bathroom with heated floors and a tub that could fit 3 people. A walk-in closet already stocked with clothes in her exact size, which should have been impossible but somehow wasn't. "He had someone pull your employee file from the catering company," Sophia said, reading Mara's expression. "Got your sizes, your basic information. Don't look so surprised. When Dante decides something, it happens quickly." "What did he decide?" Mara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sophia studied her for a long moment. "That you're interesting. That you're worth keeping close. Beyond that?" She shrugged. "He doesn't share his plans with me, girl. But I've known that boy since he was 10 years old, and I can tell you this. He doesn't bring women here, not to his home. Whatever you are, you're not just another conquest." "I'm nothing," Mara said. "I'm nobody." Nobody slaps a fork out of Dante Morelli's hand and lives to tell about it. Sophia moved toward the door. "Breakfast is at 8. Don't be late. He hates tardiness." She paused in the doorway. "And Mara? Whatever you're running from, it won't find you here. This place is a fortress. For better or worse, you're safe behind these walls." The door closed. The lock didn't click. A small mercy that somehow made the captivity worse. Mara walked to the window. Through the glass, she could see the ground stretching into darkness, the perimeter lights glowing like a necklace around the property. Beyond those lights was the city, her apartment. her jobs, her carefully constructed invisible life. All of it was suddenly very far away. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and allowed herself exactly 30 seconds of fear. 30 seconds to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Then she locked it away, compartmentalized it with all her other terrors, and turned to face the beautiful prison. Details saved lives. She'd learned that. So she would know everything about this place, about Dante Morelli, and about how to survive until she could escape. She didn't sleep that night. Not really. But when dawn broke over the Morelli estate, painting the world in shades of gold and rose, Mara was standing at the window, ready for whatever came next. Ready to survive. Breakfast was not what she expected. Mara descended the stairs at precisely 8 o'clock, wearing the most conservative clothes she'd found in the closet, black slacks and a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than her car. Her hair was pulled back in the same severe style she wore for work. Armor made of simplicity. She followed the sound of voices to a sunroom that overlooked the estate's gardens. Warm light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. The scent of coffee and fresh bread made her stomach clench with hunger she'd been ignoring. Dante sat at the head of a table that could seat 12 but was set for 2. He'd traded his suit for dark jeans and a black cashmere sweater that made him look less like a mafia boss and more like a dangerously attractive man who happened to control half the city. His hair was slightly damp, suggesting a recent shower. He was reading a newspaper, actual paper, not a tablet, and drinking espresso. He looked up as she entered, and something in his expression shifted, softened, almost imperceptibly. "You're punctual. I like that." He gestured to the chair at his right. "Sit. Sophia's made enough food to feed 20. As if summoned, Sophia appeared with a tray laden with pastries, fruit, eggs, and what looked like homemade focaccia. She set it down with practiced efficiency, poured Mara coffee without asking, then disappeared as silently as she'd arrived. "I can't stay here," Mara said, remaining standing. "I have jobs. I have rent that's 2 months overdue. 3 active credit cards all maxed out. $107,000 in debt, most of it from your ex-husband's gambling habits." Dante set down his espresso. "Sit down, Mara. We both know you have nowhere you need to be." The room tilted. She gripped the back of the chair, her knuckles white. "You investigated me. I investigate everyone who enters my world. It's called survival." His tone was matter-of-fact, not cruel. "Marcus Bennett. Married you 6 years ago, cleaned out your accounts 18 months ago and disappeared. Left you holding the bag for his debts to some very unpleasant people. You've been working 3 jobs, living in a 1-room apartment in the worst part of the city, and barely sleeping. You're drowning, Mara. Have been for a while." She wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to do anything but stand there while this stranger, this dangerous, powerful stranger, dissected her life like a coroner performing an autopsy. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" "Because you saved my life." He stood, moving around the table toward her, and she forced herself not to step back. "Because in a room full of people who've sworn loyalty to me, you were the only one paying attention, the only one who cared enough to act." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated that made her think of dark wood and winter nights. "Because you interest me, Mara Bennett, and I always pay my debts." "I don't want your money." "Good. I'm not offering it." His hand came up, and she flinched before she could stop herself. He froze, his expression darkening. "I'm not going to hurt you. Everyone hurts me eventually." The words escaped before she could cage them. Vulnerability she couldn't afford to show lay bare in 4 words. She saw something shift in his eyes, something that looked almost like anger, but not directed at her. "Not everyone," he said quietly. His hand continued its path, but slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't, couldn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, gentle as a whisper. "Who taught you to flinch like that?" "Life. Specific people, names." His voice had gone cold. "Who?" It doesn't matter. They're gone. She finally stepped back, breaking the contact, her skin still tingling where he'd touched her. What do you want from me? I want you to sit, eat. Let me explain what's going to happen next. He returned to his seat and waited. Slowly, feeling like she was sealing her fate with every step, Mara sat. The chair was comfortable. The coffee was perfect, dark, intense, touched with just enough sweetness. The food was incredible. Her body, starved and exhausted, betrayed her. Hunger hit almost painfully, sharp and undeniable. Dante watched her take her first bite of focaccia. Something satisfied crossed his face. Carlo found out what happened last night, he said calmly. The head chef wasn't trying to kill me. He was simply incompetent. Hired 3 months ago through a subsidiary, minimal vetting. Someone in my organization got lazy, and I nearly died for it. What happened to him? Mara asked, though part of her already knew she didn't want the answer. He's been relocated. A pause. Permanently. The word landed heavy. The chef's new address was not another kitchen. But the incident exposed weaknesses, Dante continued. Food preparation, vetting procedures, trust chains, I'm fixing them. He leaned forward slightly. Which brings me to you. Me? You noticed what no one else did, he said. You paid attention to details my own security missed. You acted without hesitation, without concern for personal cost. His gaze sharpened. I need someone like you close. Someone who sees what others don't. Someone who actually cares whether I live or die. You don't even know me. I know enough. His voice stayed even, precise. I know you're drowning in debt that isn't your fault. I know you're working yourself into the ground trying to escape a hole someone else dug. I know you're smart, observant, and brave enough to strike a Mafia boss when you think he's in danger. One corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. I know I want you here. As what? The laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Bitter, brittle. A food taster? As whatever you choose to be. He leaned back, the mask sliding into place. I'm offering you a deal, Mara. Stay here, work for me, and I'll make your debt disappear. The world stopped. What? $107,000, he said calmly. I'll pay it, all of it, today. By dinner, you'll be free of Marcus's mistakes. He lifted his espresso, watching her over the rim of the cup. In exchange, you stay. You live here. You eat at my table. You watch my back the way you did last night. You become part of my world. You're buying me. I'm offering you freedom. A beat. There's a difference. He set the cup down. You can say no. You can walk out that door right now. Go back to your 3 jobs, your 1-room apartment, your crushing debt. I won't stop you. His eyes held hers, dark and unblinking, but we both know that debt will kill you eventually. Maybe not literally, though Marcus's creditors are getting impatient, but it will kill your spirit, your hope, your future. Silence stretched. I'm offering you a way out, Dante said softly. The only question is whether you're brave enough to take it. Mara's hands were shaking. She set down her coffee cup before she could drop it. $107,000. Freedom from the weight that had been crushing her for 18 months. No more 3 jobs. No more 18-hour days. No more waking up at 3 a.m. in a panic, calculating whether she could make minimum payments. But at what cost? What do you really want from me? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Honestly? Dante's expression was impossible to read. I don't know yet. I know I'm not ready to let you walk away. Maybe it's gratitude. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's something else. He paused. Maybe I just want to see what happens when someone interesting enters my world and stays long enough to matter. I'm not interested, I'm just desperate. Desperation and bravery often look the same from the outside. He stood, moving to the window, his back to her. Take the day. Think about it. Explore the estate if you want. Talk to Sophia. She'll tell you things about me I'd never admit. Tonight, give me your answer. Stay and be free, or leave and keep drowning. Your choice. He left without waiting for a response. his footsteps fading down the hallway until only silence remained. Mara sat alone in the sunroom, surrounded by luxury she'd never experienced, and offered a bargain she didn't understand. Outside the window, early spring birds were singing, oblivious to the prison of choice being constructed around her. Freedom. He'd offered her freedom. She just had to figure out what it would cost her to take it. Mara spent the morning learning the geography of her gilded cage. The estate was massive, 20 rooms spread across 3 floors, each more elegant than the last. A library with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a rolling ladder straight out of a period drama. A gym that would have made professional athletes weep with envy. An indoor pool with heated salt water and windows that overlooked the gardens. A music room with a grand piano that looked antique and probably was. And everywhere, subtle reminders that this wasn't just a home, it was a fortress. Security cameras in every hallway, discreet but visible once you knew to look. Reinforced windows that looked decorative but were probably bulletproof. Guards patrolling the grounds with the kind of casual alertness that spoke of military training. The beauty was real, but so was the danger it concealed. Sophia found her in the library, running her fingers along leather spines. "He collects first editions," the older woman said from the doorway. "Rare books, most of them. Some are worth more than my childhood home. But he actually reads them, treats them like treasures, not investments." Mara pulled her hand back from a volume of Dante's Inferno. The irony of finding it in Dante Morelli's library wasn't lost on her. "How long have you known him?" 25 years. Sophia moved fully into the room, settling into a leather chair with the ease of someone who belonged there. Since his father brought him to this house for the first time. She folded her hands in her lap. He was 10, scared, angry, grieving. His mother had just died, cancer. A pause. His father, Salvatore Morelli, was a hard man, brilliant, powerful, but hard. He didn't know what to do with a grieving child. "So he brought him here?" Mara asked softly. "This was Salvatore's retreat, the place he came when the family business became too heavy." Sophia's expression softened with memory. "I was the housekeeper then, as I am now." Her gaze drifted toward the shelves lining the walls. Dante used to hide in this library. He'd read for hours, escape into worlds where the rules were clear, and the heroes won. Mara could almost see it. A small, dark-haired boy curled into one of these chairs, clutching a book like a lifeline. The image struck deeper than she expected. It made Dante human, vulnerable. It made her heart ache in a way that felt dangerous. "What happened to his father?" she asked quietly. "Killed." Sophia's voice flattened. 8 years ago, ambushed by a rival family during peace negotiations. She didn't look away. Dante was 27. He took over the family, hunted down everyone involved, and dismantled the rival organization brick by brick. A breath. Then he rebuilt everything, stronger, smarter, more controlled. Her eyes sharpened with certainty. He learned from his father's mistakes. The old ways were dominance through fear. Dante's way is dominance through inevitability. A faint smile. "He doesn't threaten. He makes it impossible to win against him." "You sound proud," Mara said. "I am." Sophia met her gaze without hesitation. "He's a good man in a terrible profession." She counted on her fingers. "He protects his people. He doesn't allow drugs in his territories. Too much human cost. He doesn't traffic in anything living. He has lines he will not cross, even when crossing them would be profitable." She shrugged lightly. "In this world, that makes him practically a saint." "He's still a criminal," Mara said. "Yes." Sophia didn't argue. "But so are the banks that evicted my daughter when she was 3 months behind on her mortgage. So are pharmaceutical companies charging $1,000 for insulin. So are politicians who take bribes and call it lobbying." Another shrug. "At least Dante is honest about what he is." Her voice softened. "And he takes care of those loyal to him. My daughter's house, saved. My grandson's medical bills, paid. My retirement, secure." A beat. He did that, not out of obligation, out of care. Mara sank into the chair opposite her, her legs suddenly weak. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he wants you to stay." Sophia studied her with eyes that had seen decades of truth. "And because I think you might be good for him." She tilted her head slightly. It's been a very long time since Dante brought anyone into his world. A pause. And even longer since he looked at someone the way he looked at you this morning. Mara swallowed. How did he look at me? Like you were a puzzle he wanted to solve. Like you were worth keeping. Sophia stood, brushing invisible dust from her skirt. Your choice, girl. But know this. Dante Morelli doesn't offer protection lightly. If he's claimed you as under his care, you're safer here than anywhere else in the world. She paused at the door, her voice lowering. Even from yourself. Then she was gone. Mara was left alone with the books. And her thoughts. By afternoon, she found herself in the gardens, walking paths lined with dormant rose bushes that would bloom come spring. The air was cold but clean, scented with damp earth and distant city exhaust. From here she could see the perimeter wall, 15 feet of stone, topped with decorative ironwork that almost certainly hid cameras, sensors, and alarms. Beautiful captivity. That was what this was. But captivity where she could breathe, where she didn't wake up calculating debt payments, where the weight on her chest eased, just a little. You look like you're planning an escape route. She spun. Dante stood about 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes. He'd changed into a charcoal suit, sharp and immaculate. Every inch the powerful man the world feared. But there was something different now. Something uncertain. Maybe I am, she said. The east wall has a blind spot, he replied calmly. Camera malfunction. I've been meaning to fix it. He took a step closer, slowly, carefully, like she might bolt if he moved too fast. If you were going to run, he added, that would be your best option. She stared at him. Are you helping me escape? I'm being honest. He stopped a few feet away, close enough now that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the subtle asymmetry of his nose from an old break. If you decide to leave, I won't stop you. A beat. But I hope you won't. Why? The question burst out of her before she could soften it. Why do you care? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything beyond maybe a thank you for last night. Why does it matter if I stay or go? Because you saw me. The words were quiet, and they landed like a blow. Not Dante Morelli, he continued. Not the boss, not the monster, not the legend. His gaze held hers, unflinching. You saw a man about to make a fatal mistake, and you stopped it. No hesitation. No calculation of what it would cost you. You just cared. I would have done that for anyone, she said. I know. His voice softened. That's why it matters. He took another step closer. Do you know how many people would have let me eat that salmon? How many would have watched me go into anaphylactic shock and use the chaos to seize power? A bitter smile touched his mouth. Half the men in that room, at least. He met her eyes again. But you slapped a fork out of my hand and told me I was allergic. You saved my life because it was the right thing to do. Not because you wanted something. Not because you were afraid of consequences. His voice dropped, intimate and raw. Because you're the kind of person who can't watch someone suffer when you have the power to stop it. She learned things about him. Small things. Important things. His hand came up again, and this time she didn't flinch. His fingers brushed her cheek, the touch so gentle it made her throat tight. Stay, he said softly. Not as my prisoner, not as my employee. Stay. Let me get to know you. Let me show you that not everyone in your life will take and take until you're empty. Let me give you something for once. Why do I feel like staying is more dangerous than leaving? She whispered. Because it probably is. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But the right choices often are. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Mara could feel her carefully constructed walls cracking. Could feel herself wanting to lean into his touch, into the promise of safety and care, and something she didn't dare name. But wanting had gotten her into trouble before. Wanting had led her to Marcus. That trust had shattered, leading to debts she'd spent 18 months trying to crawl out from under. She stepped back. His hand fell away. I need more time, she said. Take it. I'm not going anywhere. He smiled, and his face transformed from dangerous to devastating. And neither are you, apparently. Sophia says you haven't even looked at the east wall. Despite everything, Mara laughed. It burst out of her, unexpected and genuine, and she saw his expression shift. Surprise, pleasure, and something almost tender. "There it is," he murmured. "That's the first time I've heard you laugh. Don't get used to it. Too late." He turned, gesturing back toward the house. "Come on. Dinner's in an hour. Sophia's making ossobuco, and she'll be offended if we're late." "I'm not dressed for dinner. You're perfect as you are." The words were casual, but the way he looked at her was anything but. She followed him back to the house, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and dangerous possibilities. That night, as she lay in the too-soft bed in the too-beautiful room, Mara stared at the ceiling and admitted the truth to herself. She was already caught. Whether she stayed or left, Dante Morelli had already gotten under her skin. And the worst part, the truly terrifying part, was that she wasn't sure she wanted to be free of him. 3 days became a week became 2. Mara stopped marking time by when she would leave and started marking it by small moments. Morning coffee with Dante in the sunroom. Evening walks through the gardens as winter began its slow retreat into spring. Late-night conversations in the library, where they talked about everything and nothing, books, philosophy, the patterns in classical music, why the sky turned that particular shade of blue at dusk. He never pressured, never demanded, just existed beside her with a patience that was more unnerving than any threat could have been. And slowly, so slowly she didn't notice it happening, Mara's walls began to crumble. He took his coffee black with 1 sugar. He read 3 newspapers every morning, tracking his world through information rather than intuition. He played the piano poorly, but with enthusiasm that made her smile. He had nightmares sometimes, and on those nights he'd appear in the library at 3 a.m., reading until dawn chased away whatever ghosts haunted his sleep. He was ruthless in business. She'd overheard enough phone calls to know that. Cold, calculating, and unwilling to accept anything less than absolute victory. But with Sophia, he was gentle. He was respectful with the estate staff. With his underboss, Carlo, he was fair. And with Mara, he was something she didn't have a word for. Patient, interested, almost reverent. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," he said one evening. They were in the library again, in their usual spots. She'd been reading. He'd been ostensibly working, but had spent most of the time watching her. The fire crackled between them, painting everything in amber light. "That's a dangerous question," Mara said, not looking up from her book. "I like danger. I've noticed." She closed the book, marking her place with her finger. "What do I get in return?" "Whatever you want." "That's a dangerous offer." "I like danger," he repeated, and this time she could hear the smile in his voice. She set the book aside, studying him across the space between their chairs. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. More human, more dangerous in a completely different way. "I wanted to be a chef," she said quietly. "Not just a cook, a real chef. I'd saved money and enrolled in culinary school. Got 3 months in before Marcus cleaned out our accounts. Had to drop out, take the catering jobs, and let the dream die." Dante's expression darkened. "Marcus stole more than money from you. He stole time, possibilities, the person I was supposed to become." She looked down at her hands. "Sometimes I hate him for that more than anything else. Not for the debt, for making me small, for making me so focused on survival that I forgot how to want anything." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. "What would you cook?" Dante asked finally. "If you could have anything, create anything, what would it be?" "Why?" "Because I want to know. I want to know what you dream about when you let yourself dream." No one had asked her that in years. No one had cared about her dreams since. She couldn't remember when. "Italian," she said softly. "Traditional recipes with modern techniques." The kind of food that tastes like memory and feels like home. Flavors that tell stories. She met his eyes. That's what I wanted to do. Tell stories through food. Then do it. I can't, I don't. The estate has a full kitchen. Professional grade. Sophia would love help. She's been complaining about doing all the cooking herself. Dante leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. Cook, Mara. Not for work, not for survival, for joy, for yourself. Let me give you that back. Her throat was tight. Why do you care? Because someone should. And because... He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. Because when you talk about cooking, you light up. Your whole face changes. You become this vibrant, alive version of yourself that I want to see more of. That I want to protect and nurture and watch flourish. You make me sound like a plant. You're not a plant. You're a woman who's been surviving for so long she's forgotten how to live. And I want to remind you. He stood, crossing to her chair, and crouched down so they were eye level. Cook for me, Mara. Not because you have to. Because you want to. Let me taste your stories. She couldn't breathe. His proximity, his intensity, the promise in his words, it was too much, too dangerous, too close to wanting things she'd learned not to enjoy. Your turn, she whispered. Tell me something you've never told anyone. His dark eyes searched hers. For a moment, she thought he'd deflect, change the subject, and retreat behind the walls he kept so carefully maintained. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a murmur. I'm tired. So fucking tired of being the monster everyone needs me to be. I've been playing this role since I was 27. The cold boss, the calculated killer, the man who can't be touched or moved or made to care. And I'm good at it. Too good. But sometimes I look in the mirror, and I don't recognize myself anymore. I don't remember what it feels like to exist. Without the weight. Without the expectations. Without the blood. His hand came up, hesitant, and settled on her knee. Just resting there, a point of contact that somehow felt more intimate than a kiss. Then you slapped that fork out of my hand, he continued. And for the first time in years, someone saw me. Not my power, not my reputation. Just me. A man about to make a mistake. And you cared enough to stop it. No agenda, no fear. Care. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about that. About you. About how different I feel when you're near. Dante, I know. It's too much. Too fast. I should let you go. Let you rebuild your life somewhere safe. Somewhere far from my world. But I can't. I'm too selfish. I want you here. I want to see you come alive again. I want to be the person who helps you remember joy. His fingers tightened slightly on her knee. I want you, Mara. Not because you saved my life. Because you make me feel human. The world had narrowed to the space between them. His hand on her knee. His eyes locked on hers. The crackle of fire and the thunder of her heartbeat. She should pull away. Should remind him that this was impossible. Dangerous. And built on a foundation of captivity and debt and circumstances that made anything real between them a fantasy. Instead, she whispered, I'll cook for you, tomorrow, whatever you want. His smile was slow and devastating. Whatever I want. Within reason. I'm not a reasonable man, Mara. I've noticed. They stayed like that. Him kneeling beside her chair, her breath shallow, both of them balanced on the edge of something that would change everything. Finally, he stood, the moment breaking like a spell. Tomorrow, then. I'll look forward to it. He left her there, alone with the fire and the books, and the thundering realization that she was falling, and she had no idea how to stop. The kitchen became her sanctuary. Mara woke before dawn, unable to sleep, her mind already working through recipes and techniques. She found the estate's kitchen exactly as Dante had described, professional grade, stocked with ingredients that made her culinary school heart sing. Sophia discovered her there at 6 a.m., already working through prep. "He got to you," the older woman said, not unkindly. "He asked me to cook." "That's not what I meant." Sophia moved to the espresso machine and started the day's first pot. "But yes, cook. Show him what you can do. Show yourself." Mara worked through the morning in a fugue state of creative flow she hadn't experienced in years. Her hands remembered skills she thought she'd lost. Her palate recalled flavor combinations that sang. The story she wanted to tell emerged dish by dish. Antipasti that tasted like summer, pasta that felt like comfort, and a main course that balanced tradition with innovation. She was so focused, she didn't hear him enter until his voice wrapped around her like smoke. "It smells incredible in here." She turned. Dante leaned against the doorframe, dressed casually in dark jeans and a navy Henley, watching her with an expression that made her pulse spike. "You're early," she said. "Dinner's not until 7. I couldn't wait. He moved into the kitchen, his attention shifting from her to the various dishes in progress. "Can I taste?" "If you tell me what you want me to make." "Surprise me. I trust you." The words held weight beyond their surface meaning. She handed him a fork and indicated the piccata she'd been perfecting, watched his face as he tasted, held her breath waiting for his reaction. His eyes closed. A sound escaped him, something between pleasure and pain. When he opened his eyes again, the look he gave her was molten. "That's..." He seemed to struggle for words. "That's memory. That tastes like my mother's kitchen. How did you..." "Traditional recipe, lemon, capers, and white wine. But I added a touch of preserved lemon for depth and finished it with brown butter for richness." She was babbling, nervous under his intensity. "It's a story about comfort and home and..." He kissed her. One moment they were separate. The next his hand was cupping the back of her neck, his mouth was on hers, and the world was exploding into sensation. He tasted like espresso and hunger. Kissed her like she was air, and he'd been drowning. His other hand found her waist, pulling her closer, and she went willingly, helplessly, every rational thought evaporating under the heat of his mouth. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against hers, his eyes still closed. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I shouldn't have..." "Don't apologize." Her hands had somehow found their way to his chest, feeling the thunder of his heartbeat beneath her palms. "Don't you dare apologize. I promised myself I'd wait, that I'd let you come to me, that I wouldn't take without..." He broke off, opening his eyes. The heat in them stole her breath. "But you cooked me my mother's memory, and you looked at me like you gave a damn whether I lived or died, and I couldn't..." She kissed him this time, rose, on her toes, fisted her hand in his shirt, and pulled him down to her. Poured 18 months of survival and loneliness and desperate wanting into the kiss. Felt him make that sound again. Felt his arms come around her like chains made of safety rather than captivity. They broke apart only when Sophia's voice cut through the haze. "If you two are done contaminating my kitchen, the food's going to burn." They sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents. Sophia stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression caught between amusement and exasperation. "Sorry," Mara gasped, her face burning. "Don't be sorry. Be careful." Sophia's gaze shifted to Dante. "She's not one of your usual toys. She matters. Don't break her." "I won't." The words were a vow. "See that you don't." Sophia left, muttering in Italian about foolish men and the women who fell for them. Mara turned back to the stove, trying to steady her hands, her breath, and her racing heart. Felt Dante move behind her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his heat. "Mara, don't." She gripped the counter. "Don't say this was a mistake. Don't tell me we should forget it happened. I can't hear that right now. I was going to say that I've been wanting to do that since the moment you slapped that fork out of my hand." His voice was low and intimate. "I was going to say that kissing you was better than I imagined, and I've been imagining it constantly. I was going to say that I'm done pretending I don't want you in every possible way a man can want a woman." She turned. He was right there, close enough to touch, his expression open in a way she'd never seen. "But," he continued, "I need you to be sure. Because once we cross this line, I'm not letting you go. Once you're mine, you're mine. And I don't share. I don't let go. I don't give second chances to people who hurt what's mine." His hand came up, tracing her jaw with infinite gentleness. "So be sure, Mara. Be certain you want this. Want me. Because I'm not a good man. I'm not safe. And once I claim you, you'll be mine in every way that matters." Her mouth was dry. Her heart was thunder. Every rational thought screamed that this was dangerous, impossible, built on a foundation of captivity and power imbalance, and circumstances that made consent complicated. But her body knew what it wanted. Her heart knew. The part of her that had been surviving for so long knew that this, him, felt like finally living. "I'm sure," she whispered. His smile was predatory. "Then finish cooking. Feed me your stories. And tonight..." He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "Tonight, I'll show you exactly what it means to be mine." He left her there, trembling, more alive than she'd felt in years. Dinner was perfect. The food was art, and every bite was foreplay. Every glance across the table a promise of what was coming. And when night fell over the Morelli estate, Mara finally stopped running. The next morning, reality intruded with a phone call. Mara woke alone. Dante had been called away on business before dawn, leaving a note and a single rose on the pillow beside her. The note said, "Mine." The rose was white, perfect, and somehow more meaningful than a dozen red ones would have been. She was floating through the morning in a haze of remembered sensation when her phone rang. She'd almost forgotten she had it. Hadn't checked it in days. Hadn't cared about the outside world when the inside one had become so consuming. The number was unknown. She almost didn't answer. But some survival instinct made her pick up. "Mara Bennett?" The voice was male, professional, and unfamiliar. Something in her stomach clenched. "Who is this?" "My name is Detective James Morrison. I'm with the Organized Crime Unit. I want to ask you a few questions about Dante Morelli." The world tilted. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You've been living at his estate for 2 weeks. Our surveillance picked you up. We ran your information. Catering server, no criminal record, buried in debt. Interesting profile for Morelli to take an interest in." A pause. "Or maybe not so interesting. Maybe you're exactly the kind of person he targets. Vulnerable, desperate, easy to manipulate." I'm hanging up. "You should know that whatever he's told you, whatever he's promised you, it's a lie. Dante Morelli is under federal investigation. Has been for 3 years. We're building a RICO case against his entire organization. When it comes down, and it will come down, everyone in his world is going to fall with him." Her hand was shaking. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're not one of them. Not yet. You still have time to walk away, to cooperate, to tell us what you've seen, what you know. We can protect you. Get you into witness protection. Give you the fresh start you deserve." Morrison's voice softened. "Or you can stay with him, become complicit. And when we arrest him, when we put him in a cage where he belongs, you'll go down too. Is that really what you want? Prison time for a man who's probably just using you?" "He's not using me." "Then why you? Why now? A man like Morelli doesn't bring civilians into his home out of the goodness of his heart. He doesn't have a heart, Ms. Bennett. He has an agenda, and you're part of it, whether you realize it or not." The line went dead. Mara stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, Morrison's words echoing through her mind like poison. Was she being used? Had everything, the gentleness, the kisses, the promises, been manipulation? Was she really that stupid, that desperate, that she'd fallen for the same pattern that had destroyed her once before? No. Dante wasn't Marcus. What they had was real. She felt it, knew it in her bones. But doubt once seated was impossible to uproot. She was still standing there, spiraling, when Sophia found her. "What's wrong?" The older woman took one look at her face and pulled her to a chair. What happened? Nothing, I'm fine. You're white as a sheet and shaking, that's not fine. Sophia gripped her hands. Talk to me, girl. The story came spilling out. The phone call, Morrison's words, the doubt eating at her like acid. Sophia listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each sentence. That bastard, she muttered when Mara finished. Of course they're circling. Dante's been too successful, too untouchable. They want leverage. And you. She squeezed Mara's hands. You're the first vulnerability he's shown in years. Of course, they'll try to exploit it. Is it true? Is he under investigation? Probably. He's been under investigation his entire career. They've never made anything stick because he's too careful, too smart. He knows they're watching. Has known for years. Then why bring me here? Why make me a target? Because he didn't think they'd move this fast. And because... Sophia's expression softened. Because he cares about you more than he cares about being careful. That's dangerous for a man like him. But it also tells you everything you need to know about how he feels. Mara wanted to believe her. Desperately wanted to think that what she'd felt last night was real. That Dante's promises weren't just another trap. But Marcus had made promises too, and seemed caring until he wasn't. I need to talk to him, she whispered. He'll be back this afternoon. Carlo called. The meeting's running long, but Dante should be home by 4. Sophia stood. Until then, stay inside. Don't answer your phone. Don't talk to anyone. They're fishing, trying to find weakness. Don't give them ammunition. Mara nodded, but her mind was already racing, trying to separate truth from lies, manipulation from genuine emotion. Trying to figure out if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. The afternoon crawled past. She tried to read, to cook, and to distract herself. Nothing worked. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. The estate that had felt like a sanctuary now felt like a trap closing around her. At 3:47, her phone rang again. Different number. She knew she shouldn't answer. Knew it was probably Morrison or one of his colleagues trying to dig deeper into her doubts. She answered anyway. Mrs. Bennett, I'm glad you picked up. Morrison's voice. I wanted to give you one more piece of information before you make your decision. Marcus Bennett, your ex-husband, did you ever wonder where he went after he cleaned out your accounts? Her blood turned to ice. What? He's been dead for 16 months and was killed in a gambling den in Atlantic City. Messy death. Professional hit. And guess whose territory Atlantic City falls under? No. The word was barely a whisper. Dante Morelli's organization controls the Eastern Seaboard gambling operations. Has for years. If your husband died in one of those dens, Morelli knew about it. Probably ordered it. A pause, letting the poison sink in. Which means when he looked into your background, when he learned about your debt, he already knew exactly why you were desperate. He knew because he was the reason. And he brought you into his home anyway. Didn't tell you. Used your grief and desperation to bind you to him. You're lying. I have the report. I can send it to you. Autopsy photos if you want them. Marcus Bennett died 16 months ago, and Dante Morelli covered it up. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself what kind of man does that to the woman he claims to care about. The line went dead again. Mara stood in the center of the beautiful blue room, Morrison's words destroying everything she'd let herself believe. If it was true, if Dante had known about Marcus, known he was dead, known his organization was responsible, and said nothing, then everything between them was built on lies, built on manipulation and control, and a cruelty she couldn't fathom. If it was true, she was an even bigger fool than she'd been with Marcus. And if it was true, she needed to leave. Now. Before Dante came back and convinced her with his touch and his words and his dark, lying eyes that she was wrong to doubt him. The east wall, camera blind spot. He'd told her himself. Mara didn't pack. Didn't take anything but her phone and the clothes on her back. just walked out of the blue room, down the stairs, and through the garden she'd started to love. Toward freedom that felt like death. She was 10 feet from the wall when a hand closed around her wrist. Going somewhere? Not Dante's voice. Carlo's. The underboss stared at her with hard, assessing eyes. Let me go. Can't do that. The boss wants you here. Boss gets what he wants. Carlo's grip tightened. Besides, running now, with federal agents sniffing around, that makes you look guilty. Makes us look weak. Can't have that. I'm not your prisoner, aren't you? Carlo smiled, and it was nothing like Dante's smiles. This was cold. Calculating. Come on. The boss will be home soon. You can talk to him about whatever's got you spooked, but you're not leaving. Not like this. He pulled her back toward the house, and Mara went because fighting was futile. Because Carlo was twice her size and trained in violence, she couldn't imagine that she was trapped again, just like she'd always been. She'd been a fool to think anything else. Dante walked into the library at 4:32 p.m. and knew immediately something was wrong. Mara sat in her usual chair, but everything about her posture screamed flight. Carlo stood by the door, his expression grim. And between them, tension crackled like lightning about to strike. Leave us, Dante said quietly. Carlo hesitated. Boss, she tried to run. Got all the way to the east wall before I stopped her. Something cold settled in Dante's chest. I said leave us. Carlo left, closing the door behind him. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. What happened? Dante asked, keeping his voice level despite the panic clawing at his throat. What scared you? Did you kill Marcus? The question was flat, emotionless. Did your organization kill my ex-husband? The world tilted. Of all the things he'd expected, this wasn't it. Who told you that? It doesn't matter. Answer the question, did you kill him? Dante crossed to the window, buying himself time. His reflection stared back at him, controlled, composed, ruthless. Inside, his mind raced. He'd known this conversation would come. Had prepared for it, but not like this. Not with her looking at him as if he were a stranger. A monster. Yes, he said finally. Marcus Bennett died in one of my gambling operations, but I didn't order his death. Her breath hitched. You covered it up. I contained a situation that could have exposed one of my businesses to federal investigation. He turned to face her. That's different. How? She stood abruptly, fists clenched, shaking. How is that different? You knew. You knew my husband was dead. Knew I'd been living in hell trying to pay off his debts. And you said nothing. Her voice broke, sharp with pain. You brought me here. You erased my debt. You gave me safety. She swallowed hard. You made me feel like I mattered, like you cared. She met his eyes. Was any of it real, or was I just another asset to acquire? It was real. He moved toward her instinctively, then slowed, careful. Everything between us has been real since the moment you slapped that fork out of my hand. Don't. She stepped back. Don't come near me. Please don't touch me. Her voice cracked. I can't think when you touch me. And I need to think. I need to understand how I ended up here again, trusting someone who lied to me, believing in someone who used me. I didn't use you. Then what do you call it? I'm sorry. The words came rough, unguarded. God, Mara. I'm so fucking sorry I didn't tell you about Marcus. But it wasn't manipulation. Then what was it? Protection. She laughed, bitter and broken. Protection from what? The truth? Protection from unnecessary pain. He stopped, giving her space even though every instinct screamed to close the distance. Marcus died badly, he said quietly. Gambling debts, the wrong people. They made an example of him. His jaw tightened. I've seen the autopsy photos. They haunt me. I didn't want that image living in your head. I didn't want that kind of violence added to your grief. So, yes, I covered it up. I made it disappear. I let you believe he vanished because that was kinder than the truth. You don't get to decide what I can handle. You're right. A beat. I don't. His hands curled at his sides, but I did anyway. because the thought of you in more pain was unbearable to me." Silence stretched. "And yes," he continued, voice stripped bare, "when I investigated you, when I learned about your debt, your situation, I saw an opportunity, a way to help you while keeping you close." He didn't flinch from the truth. "That's who I am, Mara. I see danger. I calculate. I control variables. It's how I survive." "I'm not a variable," she whispered. "I'm a person. You're the most important person in my world right now." The words tore out of him before he could stop them. "And yes, I brought you here for complicated reasons. But somewhere between that first night and this moment," his voice broke. "It stopped being strategy. It became about you, about us, about feeling human for the first time in 8 years. She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. "I don't know what to believe. I don't know who you are. I don't know if anything you've said to me is true or just more manipulation." "Then let me prove it." He pulled his phone from his pocket, pulled up a file, and held it out to her. "Marcus's death report, autopsy, investigation. Everything I know, you can know. Every secret, every truth, every ugly detail. I'll give you transparency even though it terrifies me. Even though showing you who I really am might make you leave. Because I'd rather lose you to truth than keep you with lies." She didn't take the phone, just stared at it like it was a snake. "I need time," she whispered. "I need space. I need to think without you looking at me like that, without my body remembering last night, without—" She broke off. "Let me go. If you care about me at all, let me leave." "I can't." The admission was agony. "Federal agents contacted you, Morrison's team. They're building a case against me, and you're leverage now. If you leave, they'll pick you up, pressure you, use you against me. I can't let that happen. So I'm a prisoner again. You're protected. There's a difference." "Is there?" She laughed, bitter and broken. "Seems to me I've just traded one cage for another. At least with Marcus's debt, I knew what I was dealing with. With you, I don't know anything anymore." The words landed like bullets. Dante felt each one strike, felt his carefully constructed control cracking. "Fine," he said, his voice going cold. "You want space? You'll have it. You can stay in your room. I'll have meals sent up. You won't have to see me. But you're not leaving this estate until I know you're safe. Until the federal investigation resolves and the threat passes. That's non-negotiable." "Of course it is. God forbid I have a choice in my own life. God forbid I let the woman I—" He stopped, the words catching in his throat. 3 days. Give me 3 days to resolve the federal situation. Then, if you still want to leave, I'll let you go. I'll set you up somewhere safe, somewhere far from my world. I'll make sure you're protected and provided for, but you have to stay until then. Please." She looked at him for a long moment, her face pale, her eyes red. 3 days. Then I'm gone." She walked past him toward the door, and it took everything in him not to reach for her, not to pull her back and kiss her until she remembered last night, until she believed him. But he let her go, watched her climb the stairs, heard her door close with a finality that felt like a death sentence. Then he pulled out his phone and called Carlo. "Find Morrison. Please find out how he got to her. And find out what the fuck is happening with the federal investigation." His voice was ice. "We have 3 days to make this disappear. Make it happen." "Boss, maybe we should—" 3 days, Carlo. Whatever it takes. I'm not losing her." He hung up and stood alone in the library, surrounded by books, memories, and the ghost of her laughter. For the first time in 8 years, Dante Morelli felt helpless, and it was destroying him. Mara spent 2 days in her room, spiraling between anger and longing, certainty and doubt. Sophia brought meals, refused to gossip, but left small comments like breadcrumbs. He hasn't slept. He's working himself to death trying to fix this. I've never seen him like this. Mara tried not to care, tried to hold on to her anger. But late at night, alone in the dark. She kept remembering the way Dante had looked at her. The gentleness in his hands. The vulnerability in his voice when he'd said he was tired of being the monster. On the third morning, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email. DM." Her hands shook as she opened her laptop. The email was from Dante's personal account. 3 attachments. The first, Marcus's death report. Clinical. Detailed. Confirming Morrison's story but providing context. Marcus had cheated the wrong people. They'd retaliated. Dante's organization had been tangentially involved, but hadn't ordered the hit. The second, federal investigation status. Pages of legal documents showing that Morrison's RICO case had been dismissed 2 days ago. Insufficient evidence. Witness recantation. The investigation was dead. The third, a bank statement in her name. 0 balance. All her debt, gone. Paid off months before she'd ever met Dante. Before the dinner. Before she'd slapped that fork from his hand. Below the attachments, a single message. "I paid off your debt the day after I investigated you before I met you. Before I brought you here. Not as leverage. Not as manipulation. Because I read your story, and I couldn't stand the idea of you drowning alone. Because sometimes I do things that are good for no reason other than they're good. Because even monsters sometimes want to be heroes. The investigation is over. Morrison was fishing. He has nothing. You're safe. You're free to leave. The east wall camera is still broken. No one will stop you this time. But if you stay, if you choose to remain, know that I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that this is real, that you matter, that you're not an asset, a strategy, or a variable. You're Mara. And I'm falling in love with you. The choice is yours. It's always been yours." Mara read it 3 times, 5 times. Tears blurred the screen until she had to wipe her eyes to see the words. He'd paid off her debt before meeting her, before he had any leverage. Before, she was nothing to him but a story on paper. He'd eliminated the federal threat in 2 days, protected her from Morrison's manipulation without her even knowing she was in danger. He'd given her a choice, a real choice, even though it was clearly killing him. Sophia found her 20 minutes later, still sitting on the bed, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, girl," the older woman murmured, sitting beside her. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Mara's voice was broken. "He lied to me. About Marcus. About why he brought me here. He protected you, and he tried to tell you, in his way. Men like Dante, they're not good with words. They're good with actions. What do his actions tell you?" Mara thought about it. About the debt paid with no expectation of return. About the way he'd touched her. Gentle, reverent, like she was precious. About late-night conversations and cooking lessons, and the way he'd looked at her when she'd kissed him back. About the fact that he'd let her go twice now when holding on would have been easier. "His actions tell me he's terrified," she whispered. "His actions tell me he's never done this before. His actions tell me I might be the first thing he's wanted that he didn't know how to take." "And what do your actions tell you?" Mara closed her eyes. Felt the fear. Yes. The doubt. The scars from Marcus would probably never fully heal. But beneath that, deeper than that, was something else. Something that had been growing since she'd slapped that fork from Dante's hand. Since he'd looked at her and seen her. Since he'd offered her freedom and meant it. Love. Terrifying, impossible love. "My actions tell me I'm going to stay," she said. "And I'm probably going to regret it. And I'm definitely going to get hurt. But I'm staying anyway." Sophia smiled, satisfied. "Then you should probably tell him that, before he drives himself completely insane." Mara found him in his office, a room she'd never been invited into, the inner sanctum of his empire. He was on the phone, his voice cold as winter as he conducted business. But when he saw her in the doorway, he stopped mid-sentence. "Call you back," he said, and hung up without waiting for a response. They stared at each other across the space of his office. He looked terrible, exhausted and hollowed out, like he'd aged years in 3 days. "Hi," Mara said. Because what else was there to say? Hi. His voice was careful, guarded. Did you get my email? Yes. And I have questions. A lot of questions. About Marcus. About what you do. About what being with you means for my life, my future, and my safety. She stepped into the room. I have doubts. I have fears. I have trust issues that would probably require years of therapy to unpack. Okay, his jaw was tight. I understand. But I also have this. She crossed to his desk, to where he stood behind it, as if it were a shield. I have mornings drinking coffee with you. I have late nights in the library. I have the way you look at me like I'm the most important thing in the world. I have the feeling I get when you touch me, like I'm safe and wanted and seen. I did last night, and the way you kissed me was like I was air, and you were drowning. She stopped in front of him, close enough to touch. I have the fact that you paid off my debt before you knew me. The fact that you've let me leave twice. The fact that you're falling in love with me, and I'm absolutely terrified because I'm falling in love with you too. His expression cracked. Mara, I'm staying. Not because I have to. Not because I'm scared to leave. But because I chose you. I choose this. Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I'm choosing it. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. I'm choosing you, Dante, even though it's wild, even though it's dangerous, even though I might get hurt, I'm staying. He moved so fast she barely processed it. One moment she was standing. The next, he'd pulled her to him, his mouth on hers, his arms wrapped around her like he was trying to pull her inside his skin. The kiss was desperate, claiming, and full of 3 days of fear and want and relief. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, he said, raw and honest. I'm fucking terrible at this. I'll make mistakes. I'll be controlling and overprotective and probably drive you insane. But I love you. And I'll spend every day proving that to you if you let me. I love you too. The words felt like surrender and victory all at once. And you're going to drive me insane. And I'm probably going to slap more things out of your hand. And we're going to fight and struggle and have to figure out how to make this impossible thing work. But we'll figure it out together. His hands framed her face. You're mine now. Say it. I'm yours. She smiled against his mouth. And you're mine. Say it. I'm yours. Always. He kissed her again, softer this time. Stay, Mara. Build a life with me. Let me give you the world. I don't want the world, I want you. Then you have me. His smile was pure joy. Every dark, damaged part of me. It's all yours. They stood there, wrapped in each other, while outside the world continued its relentless spin. But inside Dante Morelli's office, in his arms, Mara finally found what she'd been searching for. Home, 6 months later, Mara stood in the estate's kitchen, surveying her domain with satisfaction. The room had been transformed from Sophia's traditional space into something that belonged in a magazine. Professional equipment, custom storage, every tool a chef could dream of. Dante had insisted. Build your dream, he'd said. Right here. So she had, and every evening she cooked. Not for survival, not for obligation, but for joy, for storytelling, for the family that had somehow gathered, unexpected and unplanned, around Dante Morelli's table. Tonight's menu was ambitious, a 7-course meal in honor of Sophia's birthday. The older woman had protested, of course. Mara had ignored her. Some people deserved to be celebrated. Do you need help? A familiar voice asked from the doorway. Or are you in the zone? She turned. Dante leaned against the frame, watching her with the look she'd come to recognize as his. That particular mix of desire, pride, and something dangerously close to reverence. 6 months together, and he still looked at her like she was miraculous. I'm good, she said, but you can taste this. She held out a spoonful of sauce she'd been perfecting for days. He crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides, took the spoon, and tasted. His eyes closed. "That's incredible," he said. "What is it?" "Red wine reduction with cherries and rosemary, for the lamb." She turned back to the stove, smiling when she felt him move behind her, his arms slipping around her waist. "You're distracting me," she said. "I'm admiring you." He kissed the curve of her neck. "Have I told you today that I love you?" 3 times, she replied. "But I never get tired of hearing it." "Good," he murmured. "Because I plan to say it at least 3,000 more times before the day's over." His hands tightened slightly. "Carlo called," he added. "The last of Marcus's old creditors has been handled. You're completely free now. No one from your past can touch you." Mara leaned back against him, letting his strength steady her. They'd spent months dismantling the remnants of her old life, paying debts, severing ties, erasing leverage. Carefully, methodically. It was almost over. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me." His voice was low, possessive, honest. "You're mine, I protect what's mine." Then he paused. "Speaking of which, I have something for you." He stepped back. When she turned, he was holding a small velvet box. Her heart stuttered. "Dante!" "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "Not yet." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, but not an engagement ring. A signet ring, smaller than his, but unmistakably a match. The Morelli family crest was etched into dark metal, elegant and unmistakable. "This," he said, "is a promise." He lifted it carefully. "When you wear this, everyone in my world knows you're under my protection, knows your family, knows that hurting you means war." "That's intense," she said softly. "I'm an intense man." He took the ring out, holding it between them. "I know it's only been 6 months. I know you're still learning what it means to live in my world." His gaze never left hers. "I'll wait as long as you need. A year, 10 years, forever." His voice softened. "But I need you to know this is permanent for me." He gestured between them. "This, us. Marriage will come when you're ready. But you're already my family. So wear this. Let me claim you in the way my world understands." He held the ring out. "Be mine, officially." The kitchen was warm. The stove hissed softly. Laughter drifted in from the other room. Mara looked at the man who had changed her life. Not by saving her, but by choosing her, again and again. And she reached for the ring. Tears blurred her vision. She held out her hand, and he slipped the ring onto her right hand. It fit perfectly, of course. He'd probably had it sized weeks ago. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more." He kissed her, deep and claiming. "Now finish cooking before Sophia murders us both for letting her birthday dinner burn." Dinner was perfect. The table was full. Sophia, Carlo, 2 others of Dante's inner circle, and Maria, Carlo's wife, who'd become a surprising friend. The food was art. The wine flowed. The conversation was warm. And through it all, Dante's hand found hers under the table. His thumb traced the ring on her finger. His eyes met hers with promises of later, of tonight, of always. After everyone had left and the kitchen was clean, they walked through the gardens together. Spring had turned to summer, and the roses Sophia tended were blooming in profusion. The air was sweet with their scent. "Happy?" Dante asked. "Impossibly." Mara leaned into him. 6 months ago I thought my life was over. I was drowning. And then you came along and— "You saved my life first," he interrupted. "Literally and figuratively. Before you, I was going through motions, playing a role. Now I feel alive." "We saved each other then." "We did." He stopped, pulling her to face him. "I know this world isn't easy. I know there's darkness here, violence, danger. I know I'm asking you to accept things that go against everything you probably believe is right." "You are," she agreed. "And some days I still struggle with it. But then I remember that you have lines you don't cross, that you protect people, that in a world full of monsters, you're trying to be something better." "I'm trying to be worthy of you. You already are." She reached up, kissing him softly. "And I'm trying to be brave enough to build a life in your darkness." "Our darkness," he he corrected. You're not a visitor anymore, Mara. You're home. Home. The word settled into her bones with a rightness that still sometimes surprised her. I want to cook, she said suddenly. Professionally, not just for us. I want to open a restaurant. Tell stories through food the way I always dreamed. Done. I'll buy you a building. Best location in the city. I don't want you to buy it. I want to earn it. Build it myself. She held his gaze. I need to prove I can do this. That I'm not just the Mafia boss's woman. That I'm still me. Something fierce and proud crossed his expression. Then you'll build it. And I'll be your investor, not your savior. We'll draw up contracts. You'll pay me back. You'll own every bit of your success. He cupped her face. But I'm still going to be unbearably proud of you. That's non-negotiable. I can live with that. They walked back to the house as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Inside, their room waited. Their life waited. Their future is still being written, but it is full of promise. Mara had spent so long just surviving. Now, finally, she was living, and it was more beautiful than anything she'd ever dared to dream. 1 year after Mara slapped a fork out of Dante Morelli's hand, they stood in the kitchen of her restaurant, Stories, and surveyed what they'd built together. The space was intimate, elegant, and everything she'd envisioned. 30 seats, open kitchen, a menu that changed nightly based on what inspired her. It had been open 3 months, and reservations were booked solid for the next 6. Critics called it transformative, essential. The most exciting opening in a decade. Mara just called it hers. Are you ready? Dante asked, adjusting his tie. Tonight was special, a private dinner for the family. The first time she'd closed the restaurant to the public to feed the people who mattered most. I'm ready. She turned and her breath caught. He wore a midnight blue suit, the same color as the one from that first night. But everything else was different. He smiled more now, laughed more. He looked at her like she'd hung the moon, and he was just grateful to witness it. Have I told you today that I'm proud of you? He asked. Only twice. You're slacking. She moved into his arms and let him hold her. Are you sure about this? Bringing everyone here? Making this place a target? Anywhere you are is already a target. His arms tightened. Might as well feed them well while they plot. She laughed despite herself. That was them. Dark humor and darker truths, wrapped in a love that had somehow survived every test. The dinner was magic. Sophia's tears when she tasted the osso buco that had started everything. Carlo's grudging admission that civilian life might have its perks. The warmth, laughter, and sense of family that filled the space. And through it all, Dante's hand in hers, his quiet pride, his absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Later, long after everyone had gone home, they sat alone in the empty restaurant. Mara's head was on Dante's shoulder, his arm around her, and both of them were pleasantly exhausted. I have something for you, he said quietly. If it's another property, I'm going to throw something at you. It's not a property. He pulled a small box from his pocket, different from the signet ring box. This one made her heart stop. Dante, I know, he said gently, cutting her off before doubt could take hold. I know we said we'd wait. I know you wanted time to build your career, establish yourself, prove you could stand on your own. He opened the box. The ring stole her breath. Simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light and fractured it into soft rainbows. But we have waited, he continued. A year, and in that year you built an empire. You stand more than fine on your own. His voice softened. And I'm tired of waiting to call you my wife. She let out a watery laugh through the shock. That's the least romantic proposal I've ever heard. Then let me try again. He slid from his chair and knelt beside her, and suddenly everything shifted. The power, the confidence, the control all fell away. What remained was a man utterly exposed. Mara Bennett, he said, voice steady but full. You saved my life, then you saved my soul. Her breath caught. You took my darkness and made it bearable. You made me believe I could be more than the monster the world needed me to be. You loved me when I didn't deserve it. You stayed when leaving would have been easier." His eyes shone. "You are the bravest, strongest, most magnificent woman I've ever known, and I want to spend the rest of my life earning the honor of being yours." A pause. "Will you marry me?" She was crying, happy tears, overwhelming. "This is really happening tears." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, of course it did. Then he was kissing her, and she was kissing back, and the restaurant that had once been her dream became the place where their future truly began. "I love you," she breathed against his mouth. "I love you more." His smile was pure joy. "Mrs. Morelli." "Not yet." "Soon." He kissed her again. "I'm done waiting, Mara. We're getting married as soon as possible." "Next month." "Next week." "Next month," she said, laughing, "or I'm taking the ring back." But she was already imagining it, already planning. "Fine," he relented. "Next month. But I'm planning everything. I don't trust you to prioritize our wedding over your restaurant opening." "That's fair." They stayed there long after closing, wrapped in each other, mapping out a future with the same care they'd used to build their present. Outside, the city kept turning. Dangers still lurked. Enemies still plotted. Dante's world would never be free of shadows, because everyone there understood what they were witnessing. A monster learning to love. A survivor learning to live. Two broken people becoming something whole. Years later, when people asked Mara how she'd ended up married to the most dangerous man in the city, she'd smile mysteriously and say only this: "I slapped a fork out of his hand, and he never let me go." It was the truth, just not all of it. The whole truth was this: she'd saved his life, and he'd returned the favor. They'd claimed each other in darkness and built something luminous. They'd chosen each other every day, over and over, despite every reason not to. And in the end, that choice, that daily, deliberate choosing, was worth more than any fairy tale. Because this was their story. Dark and complicated and absolutely, impossibly real. And it was theirs. Forever.